a podcast to honor the gods.
This better come with a sacrifice.
Deus Ex Media.
Content and Capable recognises the Indigenous people on the land of which we record this podcast on, the Bowendig people. We offer a respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome to Content and Capable, the podcast sometimes fueled by panic and panicked phone calls to your mother 10 minutes before recording. My name's Samuel O'Brien. Yes, I did call my mother about 10 minutes before I jumped on this recording this morning just to check in. It's been a rough week for everyone, but it's made infinitely better by my amazing guest who's joined me today, an amazing journalist in the world of sports. It's Marnie Vinall. Marnie, welcome to Content and Capable.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like my parents are my go-to when I'm in a panic phone call kind of mood, so I understand that wholeheartedly.
It's two different vibes as well. Like, I find that each parent gives something differently. It's like, do I need my feelings validated? Do I need someone to tell me that I'm being silly? Do I need someone to tell me to just suck it up and do it? Like, yeah.
This is probably not the best part of my personality, I don't know, but I still will call my mum when I'm sick and will be like, can you just tell me that I am brave and beautiful and doing a good job?
I have the great habit of, because I live by myself, about 2,000 k's from the rest of my family, on the walk home from work, I'll get bored and just pick up the phone and go, which family member am I going to annoy with a phone call right now? It's now all devolved into checking calendars to figure out whether people are at work, which I think is probably a sign that it needs to stop. But, old habits die hard.
That's amazing organisation. I want all of my friends' calendars synced.
Oh, I wish I had my friends' calendars synced. That's the hard part. The family ones were actually a great thing. Google does a really great job of syncing it. And back in the day when I was in high school, Mum was sick of putting everything on her calendar and not being able to figure out whose was what. So we all synced up our calendars and made sure we could see each other's. So you could go, okay, this person's got this thing on this day. And as the eldest of 10, it was just necessary. So yeah,
Eldest of 10.
Yeah. There's 9 younger siblings underneath me, which is an impressive feat on a good day and pure chaos on a bad one. So, but yes, we'll get right into chatting. Marnie, first of all, can you give a bit of a background of your work that you do in the sports world?
I find this question so difficult because I get asked a lot, how did you get to where you are? And for context, for people that don't know me, and I'm going to assume most people don't know me, I am a sports journalist at the ABC, and I just came across from being a sports journalist at The Age. So I've been doing this for 3.5 years plus. But before that, I was a freelancer, and I took up all the opportunities in sports media that presented themselves. So I did podcasts and freelance writing and freelance journalism, and I worked as a researcher for Channel 7 on the Olympics, and then I did a podcast with Essendon interviewing the Football Woman of the Year award recipient of that year. So I did a lot of, I don't want to say odd jobs, but I did a lot of different things within the space before I kind of found my feet as a sports journalist and podcaster, because I do the Footy with Broden Kelly podcast, which has become a giant part of my life and one that I am so thankful for and grateful for. And it really cements me within the AFL landscape, which I love. But it means that with AFL men's kicking off next week, that will be my whole personality until December, because that's when the women's finish.
Yeah, it's almost becomes, it's nice the way it's kind of augmented because the men's and the women's leagues now kind of fill out most of the year, and then you get like a couple of months for like pre-season and post-season like chatter, which I suppose when you actually start following, especially the AFL properly, which I've only really done in the past 2 or 3 years, it becomes way more interesting. Like you've got way more to talk about.
Oh, yes. I remember Rana Hussein, who's one of the smartest minds in, I want to say the footy world, but also just in the world. She's amazing. She once described AFL and being able to speak AFL as a social passport. And it is so true. Like I'll jump in an Uber, be like, what team do you support? I'll go to a coffee shop and be like, what team do you support? And immediately you can just chat about what's going on with that team. It makes you're just able to move through the world speaking AFL. So
Yeah.
much, well, I would say the world. You're able to move through Melbourne, which is the world. Let's be honest. No.
Yeah, let's be honest. It is kind of the centre of the world. I grew up in Queensland, so I had to take the steep learning curve. And when I moved to Victoria to work at a local paper job, I was put on the AFL tipping round in the local paper. So it was like public humiliation of just not really following it properly. So I've definitely gotten a lot better at it. But it is such a great like conversation starter, and I think we forget how all-consuming it is for people who live, especially in this part of the country. Like, you don't see... I think you see sport, like, really... People who love sport will, I think of the States especially. People who love sport, they love their American football, for example. But you don't have, like, people you go... I think vividly remembering, Michelle and Zara from Shameless, of all things, and, love their work, amazing, and they talk about pop culture, and then you go and follow their social media, and they're, at a football game for the day, for the afternoon, and you're like, I forget that people in Melbourne do that. Like, they just go and watch a game.
Like, I can tell you that Michelle goes for Richmond lifelong, and Zara is not that interested in AFL, but she is because her boyfriend, her now husband, Ollie, follows Essendon, and I don't even follow that podcast religiously, and I know that. Like,
yeah, and it's one of those things that you don't realize how ubiquitous it is until you step out of the bubble and you go, oh wait a second, I can't just default on my default questions.
Do you follow league then if you're from Queensland?
This is the really silly thing. My parents aren't fans of contact sports, so they never let us spend too much time around it. But my mother's side of the family were big rugby league and rugby union watchers and players. So yes and no. Like I'm aware. I know how the game works. I know the rules. Like I love, actually, one of my favourite sports to watch, especially at the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games, is the rugby sevens. Like, it's so much fun to watch. And it is that great combination of some of the athleticism that you see in AFL that you don't see in rugby, as well as, at least for me, the very familiar and safe rules of rugby. I don't know. I kind of lean towards more AFL now in my adult life. I don't know whether that's just because it is the football code I watch the most now. So you mentioned, you had a bit of a roundabout way of getting into sports reporting. Was that always the aim? Was the aim always to be, sports reporting, sports podcasting, or was that something that kind of came about very naturally?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it came about naturally because there was a lot of oomph that had to go into it. But once I made the decision, I have been very bullish about following this path, but it did take a while to get there. So I did a double degree fresh out of uni in business and arts because I was like, oh, well, I don't know, I'll just cover all my bases. And I started writing when I was at uni. At the time, it was Uni Junkie that a lot of fresh-faced wannabe writers could write for, and it's really devastating that places like that don't exist because it's a great place to not even just get your foot in the door, but get experience and find out whether that's something you even want to do. So I did a lot of freelance writing when I was at uni, and very much within the cultural, kind of political lifestyle space. I was very interested in issues within society, and quite often that's cultural issues, and I would write about that, and a lot of my lived experience as well. I would talk about things that were personable to me. And then I did a women in sports broadcasting program called Making the Call, trying to get more women and gender diverse people into sports. And I still remember that coming up on my Twitter feed, being like, we've got this program if anyone wants to apply. And I can remember being in my bed and applying. It's such a memory that's like stuck into my brain. And they accepted me, and they were really honest with me. So it was run Emma and Lucy Race, and now they run it through Change Our Game with the Women in Sport government. But Emma and Lucy Race having a conversation with me saying, there's a lot of applicants that have applied for this, and experience-wise, you're not at the top of the list at all, but your passion is very evident, so we're going to take you on. And I didn't realize that that was such a point of difference, that I'm just so loud about my passion. And I kept at that. I really came up through social media because I was so loud about my thoughts and opinions on Twitter, especially relating to women's sport, now Instagram and TikTok, but really through Twitter. But I very much was like, I want to be in the sports media space now that I've decided that this is a box that I can put myself in, and I've got a community that will support me and a cohort that will support me, because I also kind of felt that my skin was going to be way too thin for this space, and there are days where it is. But once I decided, oh, no, I'm going to do this. I love sport. I've always loved sport. I grew up in New South Wales, so I grew up a little Rabbitohs gal. But some of my favourite memories getting up 3 a.m. to watch Socceroos with Dad. Like, sport has always just been like heart and soul. So once I decided, I want to exist within this space, and I very passionately feel that more women should be in this space, I just kind of kept going at it. And then the Age were like, would you be interested in being a sports journalist? Because we have one of the books.
It is such a surreal experience, like having to make a decision and kind of going, I've got to commit to this. Like I can't just kind of half-ass my way through it. I remember being, having to make a similar decision and going, okay, time to commit. And then you go, and then someone turns around and offers you a job, and you're like, oh, wait a second. I think especially when you do a lot of freelance work, you go, I can actually be paid like a full wage on this. I don't have to be, I can still be figuring out how exactly I want to do this, or, in what way I think is best to do it. But like, I can still, chase the dream I committed to years ago now and get a full wage on it.
Totally. And like, I very much felt like, I hate that question. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Mm-hmm. And especially when it comes to sports media, because before I became a sports journalist, I was like, I know I want to be in sports media, and there's all these different realms that you can really exist within that, and all of these new opportunities that are going to present themselves that didn't exist 5 years ago. So how do we know what it's going to look like in 5 years' time? I'm very strong on the print journalism is dying. It's like, well, no, it's just changing. It's actually changing. It's going into podcasts. It's going into TikTok. It looks just very, very different. So it's hard to know what direction you want to go, because the direction is always changing.
Yeah, it is such a fascinating time. Like, I think especially back around the Women's World Cup and the Tilly's mania that we had, I think collectively as a society, I was speaking, people still speak in reverence, and I was actually really upset. I was out of the country when they were playing, which was really quite upsetting.
Where were you?
I was in the States, so it wasn't the worst time zone, but I was like, I don't have like a way that I know to watch this. I'm just hoping that someone else can, lament with me as the scores come in. And I think we're versing the States at the time, maybe, I don't remember, but it was. I came back, and everyone I've spoken to has like these almost sacred memories of going to pubs in the middle of winter, in the middle of the high country of Victoria, or, I now live in Mount Gambier in South Australia, and I jumped, they'd talk about, when we went and watched the Tillies play at the pub, and it's like, I don't think we've had many collective moments where we all get together and watch a sporting game, nonetheless, a women's game. And I think that was such a really transformative moment. I think even for myself, like, it's so easy, I'm saying this as a white man. It's that, too easy to, go, oh, this is an interesting growing part, but I don't need to pay attention. It's like, oh no, we do need to pay attention.
Well, one of the biggest things I think that happened with that shift is that a lot of people think, oh, I should get around women's sport because it's a good thing to do. But what the Matildas really did in the World Cup was showcase, no, you should get around women's sport because of what it's going to do to your life. Like, it is exciting and fun. And it's not like, oh, well, I should get, like, because I find it all the time in AFLW. Like, we pat, especially like men's players on the back, we're like, oh, good job going down and supporting the girls. It's like, sure, are you patting the girls on the back for going and supporting the boys? Like, it's a good quality product. And so watching the Matildas play is like, oh, there's so much narrative and enjoyment I get out of watching this. It's not just, oh, we should do it because it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I suppose you've been covering it right as, this interesting transformation, and I think some really interesting active conversations that we'll probably get into, especially around the AFLW. But has the way that you go about reporting on women's sports changed, or is this, are you seeing more editors or teams be really keen to chat more about women's sporting games and discussions around the way women's sport happens?
It's a interesting question, because even when the World Cup was happening, I was living my dream and I was so hyper aware of that. Like, women's sport was on the front page and I didn't have to fight, and Sam Kerr sneezed and I could write about it, whereas usually I'm having to or it's a dogfight to get women's sport covered. But while I was living it, I was so preparing for the come down of when that finished, and it going from the Matildas on the front and back page to women's sport being, 3 pages back from the back page again, and there being like 1 or 2 stories, and knowing that that was going to be a hard pill to swallow. And it really was, because that's exactly what happened. And there was also the pendulum swing of people ready and waiting in the wings for the downfall of the Matildas, which is what I'm really seeing, especially across my own TikTok now. Like, all the comments on my TikToks of the Matildas not playing very well in the She Believes Cup. It's just like, yeah, they're such a gimmick, and, like almost celebrating how bad they are.
Yeah. Like,
there's like tall poppy syndrome, but on steroids. But at the same time, you have people in decision-making positions, whether that's in sports administration or within the newsroom, that were like, oh, no, there is something really viable here that we should not ignore. So it is getting more attention, and it is having more, it's being taken more seriously.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think especially when it comes to women's soccer and AFLW, and I don't know whether it's just my own algorithm or the way I consume news as well. I have people who are very passionate about women's sports in my life who, talk a lot about it. And so it's very easy for me to think about it, but there is more discussions. I think the Sam Kerr trial is a really interesting case of, there was a discussion at some point of, why are we publicising this when there are conversations around domestic violence when it comes to men's tennis players, for example, and we kind of brush it under the rug. I think the editorial from The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald about the, being a news journalist and rocking up to these tennis things and no one asking the question around people's alleged domestic violence cases, that, you go, wait a second, what's going on here? This is the first question. This is the question I would lead with. I think it's really interesting, because you are getting not just more sports reporters, more female sports reporters, but more reporters in general, people who aren't aware of sports or don't speak about the sporting world enough, keeping a closer eye on things as well.
And that's also treating women's sport with respect, with not treating it with kid gloves. I remember... I don't want to drag her into this, but Des Hosking, when she got done for drink driving on a jet ski in the off season. So she at the time was a Richmond AFLW player, and I just remember being like, yeah, great. Let's not treat kids with kids. Let's not treat women's with kids gloves. Like, how would we report this if it was a men's player? Do the same.
goes. I suppose that the transitions to kind of like a really interesting conversation that I remember you having actively on social media around the AFLW last year. And I wanted to bring this up because this is where I thought it was a really fascinating one, where we were talking about scheduling and fatigue and, you know, the way that we put women's sport on and how we decide what's going on. Is that feedback loop getting to the right people? Is it because there are more conversations happening, other people being very aware of the points that are raised? You know, I remember you speaking quite strongly about 5 p.m. games in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. You know, that's not viable for people to go to.
Yes, I will just give a little bit of context for people that might not be
Sorry,
and might not know as much about AFLW fixturing as myself. Yes, so basically the AFLW season last year, they had 11 rounds squeezed into 10 weeks. So there was a condensed fixture where there was a lot of games played with just a 4-day turnaround time. So you had games, you know, teams playing on a Friday, and then they would play again on a Monday, and then they'll play again on a Thursday, and it just became really hard on their bodies. But from the fan perspective, you had a game on every night of the week except Monday, and quite often they would be 5 p.m. games on a Friday, which is not a viable time for fans to be able to watch sport, or 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, where a lot of people work 9 to 5s, and a lot of people that the AFLW were targeting are small children. And this does not make it easy for them to be able to get to games or support games. And one of the big reasons the AFL did that was they wanted to see what TV numbers would be like when they put games at those scheduling times. But you had crowds of, at sometimes, less than 1,000. There was a game at Whitten Oval between North Melbourne and Port Adelaide. Yep. At 5 p.m. at Whitten Oval on a Friday, and they had less than 1,000 people, and the conditions were horrible. It was such a rainy day. And Darren Crocker, who is the Kangaroos coach, said, well, that's a question for the AFL. We sell out all of our games that are at Arden Street at games that work for the fans at 11 a.m. on Saturday at Arden Street, our home. You're going to get fans there. You put it on at this time, you're not going to get fans there. So that, fixturing was not the best. And there was a lot of pushback. And it does seem like the AFL have taken that on board, because they are not doing that again this season. They've scrapped the condensed fixture, and whether that's listening to players saying that really took a toll on our bodies, while also listening to the numbers of viewership and tickets prices not coming in, there's a lot of different factors that they would have been considering as to why they scrapped the condensed fixture. But I think a really big one is also fan noise. It's people saying, hey, what the hell are you doing, on social media, and saying it really loudly. We saw that when the Western Bulldogs women's had a marquee game. It was their return to Whitten Oval. So it was their first game back at Whitten Oval in round 2, but it was their first home game. And they had all of this stuff ready to go. So they had like stalls and like market vibes, and they had special food trucks, and they'd put in so much effort to make this an event. And then the Western Bulldogs men's teams make it into the finals, and their elimination final against Hawthorn is scheduled at a conflicting time. And it was like, just adding to the frustration is that Sydney finished higher on the ladder, and they wanted the Friday night spot, and the AFL went, well, we don't really care. We're putting Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn there. But social media was so loud about it. Like, fans were so noisy about how much they disagreed with this particular scheduling decision that the AFL were forced to do something about it, and they moved the women's game to the men's. And of course, there was a massive club push for that. Like, the club was saying, hey, move this game. But I don't know if it would have happened if social media and fans weren't so loud and vocal. And so I do think that to get back to your original question, I do think a lot of people in decision-making roles are having to listen to things like fixturing and scheduling and how that impacts fans, because fans are saying, hey, if you continue to do this, we're not going to games. This it makes it too hard to go to games. We're backing out. We're not doing it. And so they're being forced to listen to it. And I'm also saying all of that because I'm just so encouraging of fans being so vocal about what they want, because I hear it all the time from people that work in places like AFL House saying don't listen to Twitter, that's not a real place. But I know that everyone listens to Twitter. You have to. That's what your fan is telling you what matters.
It is. I think this is the thing, is that like you see so many stories, and like you look at like a retrospective of, you know, fan clubs or things, especially especially the AFL teams, and the conversation between fans of clubs and the AFL. It's a really dynamic one that like I think when you don't receive the viewership or the attention or the coverage that it deserves, like clearly it deserves, sometimes it's very easy to go, oh, Twitter's not real, right? But then at the same time, when you have people who have found each other over a love of women's sport and maybe have realised that they actually, you know, love women's AFL and are really frustrated by a situation like this, they do realise that they've got a voice, and that working together, they can, you know, really unite and have this really important conversation and pressure people to make change. Because it's all possible. It's just, you know, I think a lot of the time, and I was talking to an academic about this the other day, a lot of the time the answers are there. You've just got to find them and be confident enough to turn around and go, but this is the answer. This is what needs to happen. So, you know, it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also find that it's actually can be as much as a like dumpster fire social media can be and Twitter can be, it also is quite cathartic. Like when the GWS Wacky Wednesday costume scandal happened last year, the context, GWS dressed up as pretty problematic things at the end of season, Wacky Wednesday. Yeah. And I remember hearing this news filter out, and there's not a lot of women with microphones in mainstream footy media. So we're getting the takes of the same kind of people. And I just feel like, no, this is not how I feel knowing that this went on. So I go to Twitter and there's all of these women who are explaining why that is so problematic, and they're voicing things in a way that I'm like, oh, I feel seen and heard in this space. So even though it can be like, yeah, Twitter's a hellscape, it's also where my people are.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the beauty of social media platforms like Twitter, and I think especially TikTok, where you can get on, you film a video, and you might be just getting ready to leave the house, and you kind of pour your heart out and go, this is what I'm thinking about. This is what is working. This is what isn't working. I think your content, especially to me, came across my feed in a way more consistent way when you were going on strike with The Age. Not to talk about that too much, but
go for it.
It was a really interesting time, because I was like, oh yeah, and like I was sitting there going, oh, this is like really interesting to hear a perspective that you don't hear from very often, because a lot of, I worked for the ABC. It was a lot of the coverage was, here's a shot of people walking down the street, who have walked out of the job, and here's a press for a press conference with the people, or Mike. Was it Mike Sneesby? I don't know.
Yes.
Someone pushing over an Australian reporter in the Canberra airport, and I was just like, it was nice to see a human and go, this is what like a strike means day to day.
I love hearing that.
Yeah. It reminded me of all things, and your content especially reminded me of content from the WGA strikes the year before, I think. So
I love hearing that. Thank you. That's awesome. So because it's so funny because with the strike, we were under protected action for the time that we were striking. So for 4 days, I was allowed to publish my thoughts and opinions on social media for 4 days only.
Yeah. It was like the greatest, and you know, you and I now work for the national broadcaster. We go, oh gosh, you got to be really careful what I say. You know, don't come across. You know, we've seen, I don't know, watching the Antoinette Lattouf case and all sorts of things like that. You kind of go, it is, you know, you've got to be really careful because people do interpret things in many different ways, and it's so. I don't know, it's freeing sometimes to kind of go, oh, I'm not bound by editorial standards for a hot second here. Let me just say what I think.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating space because I love social media so much for, like, I just want news to be more accessible across.
Yeah.
I feel that very fundamentally. But as, yes, you know very well, we are both beholden to such strong editorial standards. And so all of my TikToks, there are so many filters in my brain that everything, like the amount of stuff I filmed that could never be posted because everything that is posted has to go through so many filters in my brain to make sure everything that I'm saying ticks off against the editorial standards. And I love my boss and he knows that. And I know that he monitors my TikTok.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
Good.
Yeah, it is a scary thing. Like, and every now and then I have someone tap me on the shoulder and go, oh, so you also do this? And I go, yeah. And they go, okay, just double checking that, you know, everything's all good. I'm like, yeah, I promise I'm doing the right thing. Leave me alone, please.
Yes.
There's so many filters. I don't post out of it. You know, most of the time I don't post out of anxiety first. So, you know.
So much same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned before, you know, that not a lot of women have microphones when it comes to reporting on sport. Is that changing in your perception?
Yes, you will notice a whole slew of petite, white, blonde women now getting jobs in sports media, particularly the AFL landscape. And again, this comes from Rana Hussein, who I first had this conversation with like 4 years ago about diversity in the AFL landscape, who said, yeah, well, it's women like you who get shoehorned in first. And I'm so hyper aware of that because it's true. I was having a conversation with my friend about someone who just recently got a job within sports media. And I said, yeah, okay, like, surprised I hired another blonde white woman. Like, this is not a reflection of you, to my friend who didn't get the job. Because this is kind of just the way that progress happens slowly, quite often, really frustratingly. And women are getting more microphones, 100%. But it's not as easy as saying, oh, look at all these women we now have in front of the camera. Because also there's not a lot of women behind the camera, which is also very systematically problematic.
Yeah, and it's those things of like, it can't just be the people you see. It needs to be the decision makers at the top of the tree, and as you said, behind the camera, but also, you know, people who are writing the media releases. Like, it is nice to see more women who are in charge of social media accounts or who are, you know, doing media for more AFL teams. Especially, I'm thinking of, I saw a post on LinkedIn about, you know, there was someone who was on a media team for an AFL team who was talking about how, you know, she'd managed to, you know, really create a lot of personal value in a brand of a football team. And I think, you know, that's great. But as you said, you know, it's diversity in all shapes and sizes and colours.
Yeah. And lenses and perspectives. It's, yeah, like one of my proudest things about me is that I went to a public school. And if that's the bar that I'm clearing, like, you know what I mean? Like, I do think that I have, like, there's a lot of hurdles and barriers, and I cry with frustration of being a woman and dealing with what it's like to be a woman in this industry once a week. Like, the frustration really builds up with me. But I'm always reminded, like, oh, you have it so easy, babe. Like, you have it so easy. And because I have a lot of friends that are women in colour within sports media spaces, and I'm so thankful to them for this, will be really frank with me about how easy I have it.
And I think it's also really great, you know, and it goes back to building an algorithm, I suppose, of, you know, surrounding yourself by people with those diverse perspectives. I always tell, and it's almost a brag at this point, but I almost tell people all the time about my work in community radio when I was back at uni, because it was my first opportunity to work as a real journalist a little bit, but also it was for Triple Z. I'm wearing the shirt right now, of all things.
I love.
And it is famously one of the more like really out and really, really does a lot of work to make sure that it's not just talking about, but it's also platforming people who are of such diverse backgrounds. And so I was forced as a 18, 19-year-old to confront a lot of assumptions I had, shamefully being, a white man who went to a private school, who's, now doing a journalism degree and going, oh, wait a second, this is why this is not right, or I need to check this language, or I need to, or how can I include a broader perspective in this? I feel, I think there are, when we track the diversity in stories, I cringe every time that there is not, there's not a person of color that's on my sheet to tick off, or, there's not, I don't have a count of Indigenous people that I've spoken to in the last week. And I go, wow, I've really kind of let the ball drop a little bit in making sure that, I'm not just talking about it, I'm showing it.
Yeah. Oh, and bless the ABC for making us do those tracking. Just for anyone listening, we do track everything.
It is meticulous. It's like 10 o'clock every day. The show wraps up and I'm like, okay, so how many stories did we do? And it's one of the great things. And I really enjoy it actually, because it does. It's a good like mental, it's a mental thing. You go, you go through that list and it's, male, female, non-binary, Indigenous, people of diverse backgrounds, people with disabilities. And you go, oh, I actually did a story about disability and we didn't actually speak to anyone who was disabled. Oh, wait a second. Maybe, we should fix that. And it is really great. And I think the other thing that I've been really enjoying, and I think this is another thing, is that seeing people with lived experience come on, the center of lived experience journalism, whether it is, creating careers for women who retire out of sport, because they are more than qualified to commentate any AFL game, for example, an AFLW player, because they've had that such vast array of experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Look, we've talked about your social media a little bit, but I wanted to mention it, and talk about it. You've, been quite frank in a lot of your conversations on social media. It's been great to see, you talk about really important issues. Do you think that it's encouraging other young women to kind of go, actually, yeah, I think that there is a space for me to talk?
Oh God, I hope so. I hope that with every cell in my body, there is evidence that yes, because I have a lot of particularly young women reach out to me, aspiring journos, which is very cool, but also people that just want to exist in the space. I'm so conscious of highlighting the positivity within it, because I can be so aware, especially on Twitter in my early days, I would often bite back at trolls and quite often tweet trolls, and I would and sometimes highlight some of the really awful things that were said to me or about me. And I don't do that anymore because I don't want other young women to see that and then be scared off from working within this space. But at the same time, I want to be honest about what it's like, because there are days where social media can be horrific.
Yeah.
But mostly, it's positive conversations that I have with young women.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there things that still need to be done? Like, what isn't working at the moment?
Oh, goodness. You know what? No one has the answers. And yes, I've been on a lot of calls and I've sat in a lot of meetings with the higher ups about how do we help you when the social media has been quite bad? Because a lot of organizations are grappling with this new space that they don't fully understand, and they don't know how to protect their staff, and especially when they have to exist within that space. I mean, there are times where like I've written articles about Pride Round, and then I've been on the receiving end of a lot of homophobia. And from my manager's point of view, well, you wrote that article for us. That is a workplace thing that is happening really because of your workplace. Therefore, we have a duty of care over you. But how do we stop trolls emailing you, DMing you? Like, we can't do that. And so they don't know, other than saying, here's a free counselling service.
Yeah.
And would you like a day off? No one really knows how to navigate this space. And I think it's so easy to say, well, more should be done to protect young journos or to young people in sports media who have to exist with online because of their jobs. But what does that look like? Because I don't think anyone has the answers. And I feel very, very, very well supported. But at times, no one knows how to support. And there's some times where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to actually be really upset for half a day, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Like, all I've got to do is let myself feel that and get over it.
And I think the scary thing, not to bring it back in the context of the workplace that you and I both work at the moment, but like you bring it back to working for people. You know, we don't write this content for ourselves. We write it for the people who are reading, for the audience. And so often people assume that we aren't writing it for the audience. Like if we don't think it's a story worth telling, we're just doing it to tick a box.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I've been on the receiving end of yelling phone calls. I work in a small town. You see Facebook posts. You see all sorts of really terrible things. Terrible things directed towards my colleagues. Terrible things, you know, directed towards the guests. And I work as a producer. I'm supposed to be that filter. And it is there are days where I walk in and I go, I don't want to throw the phone away. Like, get it out of here. I don't want to pick it up. Don't let anyone email me. How dare you, give out my email? It's like, it's like, how do you make a space safe when there are going to be people who are just terrible to, it can't be reasoned with either. Like, it's so, I think that there is a youthful optimism, and, you see this where you go, surely we can reason with you. Surely we can explain where we're coming from and go, this is why this is not appropriate, or this is what needs to change. And it's not, some people just don't want to hear it, which is terrifying and sad.
And I love what you say about how we're writing for our audience, because so often people will say, well, just get off social media then. But like, no, because I want to know what our audience are saying about the content that we're writing for them. Like, yes, there are some people that are just going to rage bait for the sake of it. There's some people that are just going to troll for the sake of it. But I'm not going to get off the platforms where we get the feedback from the people that we're doing our jobs for.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, whether you work in private or public media, whether you work for, an AFL team, or you are a politician's media manager, all your work has an audience. And if you are in an active dialogue with that audience, you don't know what is working, what isn't working. And you don't have people to check you and go, wait, that's wrong. Or, Like, I think there's so many mistakes and there's so many possibilities for things to go wrong, especially in a burgeoning sector of a really, women's sports media is so massive now. But as it grows, you've got to check and balance.
And not all feedback is trolling. Like, some of it's really, really, really valuable. Like some of the negative stuff, I really listen and take on board, because sometimes it's really constructive and helpful.
Oh, yeah. I remember, what was it? Someone rang in, very passive-aggressive. I love our listeners sometimes. They just are the most passive-aggressive people out there. They rang in and were like, that guy that was on the radio just before, he just ums and ahs too much. You need someone to stop umming and ahhing. The guy that was on the radio was me. And I was like, okay, I'm fixing that one really quick. It's so easy to to get in and think you're doing a good job and go, oh, actually, yeah, there is room for improvement. And I don't know whether that's the music side of me, where, you know, my childhood in, you know, music spaces where you are never perfect and there is always room for improvement. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Looking forward, and you mentioned you don't like 5-year plans, and that's but, you know, where do you hope to see your work taking you? You know, is there a selfish dream, you know, even short term, you know?
Yeah. Can I be so honest with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want a Walkley in my life so badly. I want it so badly because also I love journalism so much and I think it's so important. And my sister works for the Washington Post and she's the coolest person that I know and she's the smartest person that I know. And watching her exist within the journalism space, I have so much admiration and so much awe. And so that has just like widened into journalism more broadly.
Yeah.
And even just like, oh my goodness, like without sounding totally up my own ass, when I won the Quill with Greg Bourne for the 2023 World Cup coverage, I still can't believe it. Like I cannot believe it. That is my name on a quill. That's insane. That's so cool. Like what the hell? It feels so surreal. Like it feels like I'm living in a dream when I see that. And obviously the next step is a Walkley.
Of course it is. I suppose that makes me think, is there enough recognition of sports journalism in official journalism spaces like the Walkleys that can be accused of being uptight from time to time?
Oh, yes. I think it's, oh my goodness, while we're on it, I think it's so funny because when Chapel Roan won the Grammy, there's a clip that went, was all over my social media of her talking about how, like, dumb the Grammys are, like, from a few years ago. And it's like, yeah, obviously stuff like the Quills and the Walkleys is like, they're even judged by our peers, by the people in the space, and those peers exist within systems that we've talked about are super problematic. And so do I think that awards are a reflection of the best? No. But do I think that, like, Nick McKenzie with his, like, all his Walkleys are so well-deserved and he's, like, very cool?
Yeah.
Like, yes. And so I don't think the stuff like the Walkleys and the Quills are, like, without problems. And I don't think they're an accurate representation of also impact journalism.
Yeah.
Because, oh my goodness, you've started me now. Like the AFMAs, I think there is the AFL Media Awards. Because the piece that I've been pat on the back the most for in my AFL reporting career is when I broke that Nathan Burke was let go by the Western Bulldogs. And I broke that story and everyone's like, wow, amazing. Like the text messages that I got, the praise that I got internally from my organization, externally. But that was information that I just got to the public 6 hours before the public was going to get it anyway. Yeah. Real journalism is supposed to get information to the public that they were never otherwise going to get. It's supposed to hold power to account. And the AFL media world doesn't have a high enough value on that kind of journalism. So I sit at the AFMAs and I'm like, why is Russell Jackson not getting every single award available? Because he has broken stories that the public never would have otherwise got. Like Caroline Wilson and Sam McClure getting a quill for the Adelaide camp. Yes, great. We would not have known that happened if they didn't do the hard yards and the proper journalism to get that. But reporting that someone got fired 12 hours before the public were already going to know, or that a coach has decided to retire the night before he was going to tell the playing group anyway, that is not and should never be the height of journalism.
No, and I think it is glorified sometimes because it makes the breaking news headlines and it enters the live blog and all of a sudden, this story that you've written is everywhere. And I see it, I think especially of all things, being from South Australia at the moment, we're talking about the wireless steelworks, and all of a sudden, the state government forced it into liquidation, and we must have sent so many reporters up there, and like the Premier and the Prime Minister and everyone. Well, I'm like, normally there is one journalist who works in Wales, and that is it. Like, there is no one else, like, who works there. And I'm like, this is just story could happen anywhere in, like, it's not a special story. The reporting around it's really good, don't get me wrong. But, like, and I think about it, I think you're talking about power to account. I think it's going to have to be a moment of reckoning, I think, for institutional organisations, especially that have had a lot of power over their own narrative, something like the AFL, where they have had a lot of communication power over the way stories are told.
Yeah.
You have to come to a reckoning at some point and go, the ugly truths that, a journalist might be bringing up. I remember, and I think she's submitting it for a quill this year, but my friend Hannah, who wrote a story about women's AFL in regional Victoria, and we both had worked at the same paper together, and she'd been working on this story for months and months and months before, getting to the Age and being able to publish it there. And it was
What's
just
her last name?
Pardon? A
What's her
Kennelly.
last name? Oh, cool.
Yeah. She and I worked together in Mansfield, and
I know the story that you're talking about.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it sitting on my office.
Oh.
It's I remember that, like, witnessing the work that she was doing to get that story up, and I go, no one would have heard about how far people have to drive, and I've driven those roads, and I've crashed into kangaroos on those roads in the middle of the night. Like, it is an inherently dangerous thing, and people just don't see it. I think especially we're really lucky. We've got a great set of, especially down in this part of the country, great diversity of news sources. You've got, the Nine papers, you've got the News Corp papers, you've got the ABC, and you've got the commercial TV networks. So you've got this great variety, but, a lot of it is city oriented, and when you are able to tell a story that hasn't, these people who don't get a national stage to talk about the things that they think is normal every day, that is actually really not normal, because you could drive 20 minutes and bump into about 5 football fields in suburban Melbourne very easily. It is. You take it for granted sometimes, and then all of a sudden it is affronted to you, and you go, actually, that is, really important story to tell.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just very passionate. Like, that story, she pitched it for her cadetship, and we worked on that pitch. Just like I was the one who was, rereading things and going, does this make me sound crazy? And, and I was just like, the exhausting effort, like the travel and the, you don't do that story every day. And
yes, but unfortunately it's all mitigated. Mitigated is not the word I'm looking for.
Mitigated?
Sure, by the fact that she's a Carlton supporter. All her goodwill is out the door, I'm afraid.
Yes. We can't... well, the problem is that she's actually a dual Carlton Brisbane supporter.
Dual supporter? Oh, get it out.
Yeah, that's the thing that I take offence with, is you've got to pick one team.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a Brisbane supporter, because they
take her quill out of her hands.
Hannah, she won't hear the end of this now. But yeah, I suppose to wrap things up, if there was something that you wish you had told yourself in the past, what would you say? Like, what would you say to... I'm thinking especially there's a trend at the moment on social media of, like, I met teenage me.
Have you seen mine? I made a TikTok about this.
Oh, did you? I did not see it, sorry.
So I'm 29. So if I met my 19, let's say 19 as younger self for coffee, and no, not 19, 9-year-old self. If I met my 9-year-old self for coffee, say she's getting a hot chocolate, she asks how many Essendon finals we've won. In the last 20 years.
Oh.
I tell her none.
None. Oh, gosh. Poor Essendon supporters.
So that's... I haven't actually thought seriously about the trend, because any chance I can get to make fun of my club.
Of course.
I do. Even just, like, sometimes... And I do empathise so much, because I think footy is so important. It takes you, honestly, high power. It makes you believe in something bigger than yourself, all of that stuff. Very, very important. So I do empathise a lot with Essendon supporters who are really feeling it. But for me, working in sports media, particularly with the Footy with Ron and Kelly podcast, it's great for content. It is great to go for a team that cannot win a final to save their life. The jokes are endless.
It's such a healthy fountain. It's like a fountain of youth at this point. You just go, yes, more and more. Yes, please.
But when it comes to the women's team, give me that premiership. But what would I tell my younger self? I think it's really hard because, like, when I think about my younger self, I just have so much kind of kindness towards her, and I kind of want to just wrap her in a hug. And when I think about like myself at 10 and the struggles I was going through then, and 13 and 14 and 17, they all look just so different.
Yeah. And I think, especially when you look back, it's so easy to go, these were the building blocks that has made me as successful as I am today. Like, yeah. Sometimes I look back and I go, what a silly person I was.
Oh my God, yeah.
There's a photo of me at the age of 14 holding 4 Cadbury fundraiser chocolates, a trombone strapped to my back, my school bag strapped to my front, and I go, what is this photo? What is this child that has decided to do this? Like, what? It's like, calm down, slow down. You can take your time.
Yes. Oh my God, you can take your time. You can take your time is a great one. I remember feeling like I was in such a hurry all the time. But then again, I actually don't want to say that because being in a hurry got me here. I've always felt very strongly about the world and my position in it. And I feel like I've always been quite intense as a person, but now I can channel my intensity into my career, which is a really good thing. I've worked out what I would say, and it is be kinder to your parents and let them in more. Because I have such a strong and good relationship with my family, but like that period in high school where I just shut them out, I just don't do that. They are like the best people and the smartest people and the coolest people and the most supportive people. It's not probably that helpful in terms of like chatting about women's sport, but that's what I would say.
I think it is, though. I'd like to argue that it is helpful because I think sometimes you feel alone and talking about things that you're really passionate about. You get self-conscious, and I do this all the time with my parents. I'm like, am I coming across as too nerdy? I'm talking about niche political issues in a country town that they don't even live in and they visited once for like 3 days. And it's just like, is this... But then I'm like, wait a second. I tell them the nerdy thing because then in 3 weeks' time, they will ask me a random follow-up question about it.
Yeah.
Like, whatever happened to the blue blob? And if anyone is from Mount Gambier,
tell us what happened to the blue blob.
Oh, well, it's approved. It's going to be built, and it's being built here in a very prominent location. But yes, no, it's Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. It's actually been really almost cathartic. To be really honest with you, it's the first time I've recorded this year, so I am feeling in a great rhythm, and it's really nice to have a conversation that has a really beautiful and positive tone.
Oh, thank you. I love hearing that. That's great, especially because there are times where I'll be like, these are things that I really care about. So for that to be to be the receiving end of all of that is and had a good experience is great.
I love when people correct me. It's one of the few things where I just go, yes, please tell me why I'm wrong because I need to know because I hate being wrong. So,
same.
It's like,
but it's a good thing that you and I have never been wrong about anything.
Of course. My siblings aren't allowed to question me on anything. I'm right all the time, and my advice is totally infallible. Look, Marnie, where can people find you on the internet? Because I feel like there's going to be some people who want to hear more about your amazing takes.
Come hang out with me. I love Instagram for people that are kind. I feel like Instagram's the safest place where I actually post myself. You know what I mean? Like I would put photos up with me and my sister. I would never put a photo up with me and my sister on Twitter, but that is where I go for journalism stuff. And I love the conversation that happens on there for my brain. And then I love posting TikToks mostly about women's sport. And I do a podcast. If you care for the world of AFL, The Footy with Broden Kelly I'm on that once a week.
Yeah.
Keep chatting. Yeah.
That's starting up again this week, isn't it? I think I saw that post.
It is. It's happened. Yeah, actually, as we've been chatting on the Slack, I've noticed saw on my phone that a few promo videos have come through, and I love it so much. I hate it. I hate watching myself. I would prefer to be voice only always. Yeah. After I've just said how much I love TikTok and Instagram.
Well,
but
yeah.
Control of that image.
Yeah, I think you look at in long form video, and hence why this is an audio only podcast, because it is, you look at yourself, and I look at myself and I go, why did I decide to wash my hair that many days beforehand? Or, you know, why did I decide to redo my skincare like 25
Why
minutes
did I wear those
recording?
jeans?
Yeah, all the time. There's a video of me that the ABC social team took and put nationally, and I'm wearing the daggiest jumper I own. And I'm like, why did that go nationally? The greatest part about that video, it was about coffee prices, and I interviewed a whole bunch of people on the street, and it went on like ABC Landline and all sorts of places, and everyone was like really positive, and the comments were really nice, and I read through all of them, and then I made the mistake of clicking on our own ABC page, and the comments were really mean and not nice.
Oh yes, I have to not look at comments sometimes if I do videos for ABC Sport, although usually they're quite nice actually.
Yeah.
There's just a few times where I've been like, hold on a second. But it was like, that's another downside of there not being enough women in sport is because I do the podcast with Broden, Kelly, and Tom, who are amazing, and I love them so much, and they're two of my favorite people in the world. But I will look at some of the videos from that day, and I'm like, did no one want to tell me to fix my hair? I'm sorry, what the fuck? Literally, there was a video, and I was like, okay, so half of my hair came out of the claw clip I was wearing, and no one decided to mention it. It wouldn't. If there was one woman on set, there would no way that would have happened.
Yeah.
Oh,
immediately. And I think we need more men to be aware of like checking, like double check. Is everyone all right? Everyone's, you know, hair and face and everything in place. I do it all the time now. I'm like, okay, so how does everyone look? Is everyone looking fine? Everyone looking okay? Does everyone look like they're having a good time? And,
yes.
You know.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes I'm like, does my face look okay? And I'm not fishing for a compliment. I'm asking you to tell me if I need to fix the fucking lipstick in my teeth. Like, oh, anyway.
Yeah, no. I feel you on that. There's definitely been, you know, bad picture days. I, of all things, went through my old ID cards from high school.
Don't do that.
It was no, thank you. Awesome. Is there anything that you've been reading, watching, listening to? I think you and I briefly talked about baking for a hot second there. So, but I don't know. Is there anything that you wanted to plug?
I'm currently reading Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors, and I really enjoy it. I think it's kind of one of those like easy reads, but it's all about sisters, which my sister's my favorite person, so I can relate quite heavily to that like bond that is the biggest theme of the book. But it's really interesting the way that Coco's written these characters. I absolutely love. I am watching White Lotus like everyone else because I want to be part of the internet dialogue around it. I like enjoying the memes that get put up. And I'm very strangely watching a docuseries about JFK because I find that it's the only thing that will pull me out of my footy brain is like history.
Yeah. I feel like you need something to pull you out of like your day job. It's like, what am I doing differently? You know, for me, it's like Tuesday nights is $10 movie night. So,
love.
Especially with
oh my God, I just saw A Real Pain. Have you seen A Real Pain yet?
I have not, but I feel like I'm going to cry, and I am very excited to watch it when our local cinema finally gets around to showing it.
Ooh, okay. Well, check back in after that.
It's one of those ones where they advertised that Conclave was going to come out around Christmas time, and they pushed it back by almost a month. So Conclave came out in January at our local cinema. It was like, we're like, wow, everyone else has seen Conclave. They've now, Io Debris done like the live reading on YouTube, and then we get to see it here. It's like the Australian delay still exists in regional Australia, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness.
I will plug cinnamon scrolls. My sister sent me a recipe. I made it because one of my co-workers was bemoaning the fact that I bake goods and then don't take them into work.
Yes,
And
I would
so
also bemoan that fact. I'm
I
on
did
their
it-
side.
I would like to say it was the breakfast presenter. He did it to me on air. Connor, if
Feel
you're listening
justified.
to this, this is it's okay. I made them, and they're sitting in the work fridge this week, and they're really lovely, except for the fact that I may have forgotten to put the eggs in the dough.
Oh.
I don't know what I did to forget that. I blame my sister's beautiful handwriting but terrible recipe writing.
Like, I'm not a big baker, but even I know that is a very critical ingredient. That is a very crucial.
The problem was it's like a yeast-based dough, and I don't put eggs normally in yeast-based dough. So it was like, you know, the bread recipe I use, because I'm the kind of person who has a bread machine, which I think is the most insufferable characteristic I have ever. But and it's like, I don't need eggs. And then I got to making the icing and was like, so where do I put the eggs in? Reread the recipe. It was like, oh no, that was supposed to go in at the start. So
Just whack them on top. They'll be right.
So there's now 2 eggs sitting in my fridge, 2 very expensive eggs from the $14 carton I bought a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Can I plug something then? And I will recommend what you should do with these eggs. I'm so into dill. I feel like it is a undervalued and underrepresented herb. Underappreciated is probably the better term for it. So make a herb omelette with dill. Just go buy some dill. I did it with dill and jalapenos, and it was so good, so tasty. And you don't even need it, like, you can just eat it, like, you don't even need bread or anything. Like, it's so good and delicious.
I have to do that. I will pop to the shops. It's only a short walk down the street, so I definitely got to do that. Well, thank you once again, Marnie, for coming on the podcast. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you. I've had a lot of fun.
Content and Capable was recorded, edited, and produced by Samuel O'Brien. You can follow the podcast at Content, the letter N, Capable on Instagram, and you can find it on Facebook. You can also send an email through to contentandcapablepod@gmail.com with any of your thoughts, queries, or concerns. The best way to support the podcast is to leave a review on your preferred podcatcher so more people can hear the podcast. The art was done by Opia, and the music was written, edited, and produced by Jason Hilton. Content and Capable is proud to be a part of the Deus Ex Media Network, where you can find a podcast for any of your nerdy interests.
I'm Christina Kahn.
And I'm Leela Hilton.
And this is Burn Before Reading,
the podcast about shiterature.
We're here to examine the terrible writing we did when we were younger.
Like that school project you were really proud of.
Or that poem you wrote when you got dumped.
Well, how about that apology letter you wrote to your mom when you got into that fight?
Or the song you recorded before you knew how to write music.
Okay, don't at me. And we're here to talk about other cringy literary topics along the way.
Like the Library of Alexandria.
And Dewey Decimal.
His name was Melville Dewey.
Oh, well, do we want to get the clips rolling?
I don't think I ever recovered from this in terms of being cool.
Why did I say any of this?
I do like the drama.
So there is actually quite a bit to unpack here.
Oh, all this drama was so addictive as a teenager.
There's no punctuation to it. I'll start with that.
I actually have no memory of this.
There were so many lies that I was telling.
It's not terrible.
No one really taught me how to write a good short story.
That was a journey.
Listen to Burn Before Reading
every Wednesday, wherever pods are cast.
Thank you for listening to Content and Capable. Don't forget to rate and review, and we'll see you next week for another episode.
Deus Ex Media.